There are moments in life that no one sees. No spotlight, no stage, no applause. Just you, your breath, and a subtle movement rising from somewhere inside you. A delicate little click that you could easily miss if you weren't truly paying attention. Not grand, not loud, not dramatic. And yet, those are often the moments that open the doorway to an entirely new version of you. The interesting thing is those moments of change rarely appear when you are trying your hardest. They don't show up on the days you push yourself to the limit or fight life with every last bit of strength. They arrive in the moments when you've stopped forcing, when you soften just a little, when you become still. When the tension inside you suddenly settles, revealing a clarity you've never noticed before. But this is the paradox that deceives most of us. Since childhood, we've been taught that anything valuable must come with effort, struggle, and pressure. That change must be difficult. Transformation must be painful. Success must demand sacrifice. Our culture almost worships struggle as if exhaustion is proof that you've done enough. So when people hear concepts like quantum manifestation or shifting reality, most instantly associate them with something complicated, mystical, reserved for a special few. They think they must meditate for hours, visualize until their head hurts, write hundreds of affirmations every day, and still nothing changes. All because of one seemingly harmless belief. To change, I must try harder. But what if that belief is the very thing blocking you? What if extreme effort isn't the doorway into a new reality, but the lock keeping you in the old one? Imagine holding a key. You don't need force to open the door. You just need to slide it into the right groove. That is the essence of quantum manifestation. Not forcing, but aligning. Not fighting, but coherence. Not pushing to exhaustion, but releasing the inner resistance that keeps you stuck. Have you ever had a moment like that? A moment so small, so quiet, yet it made you realize, wait, I think I've changed. Maybe it happened while driving alone late at night, or while sitting on your front steps, listening to the wind moving through the trees, or perhaps in the middle of a busy day. When you paused for one deep breath and suddenly felt a layer of pressure drop away. That moment doesn't feel like winning a battle. It feels like something opening. A new space you don't have to fight for. You simply step into it. So what if manifesting is not nearly as hard as you think? What if you don't have to struggle? What if you don't have to bend the universe to your will? What if everything you want already exists as parallel possibilities, and all you need is to send a clear signal into the field? A signal not covered by tension, fear, doubt, or force. A signal that comes from ease, not effort. This is not how we were taught to think about change, but it is how nature works. An electron does not struggle to become a particle. A raindrop does not force itself to fall. A seed does not strain to break through the soil. It simply opens when the conditions are right. So why do we beings made from the same quantum rules believe we must fight to transform? And here is the most important question. The question that opens this entire video. If quantum manifestation is natural, accessible, and effortless, how many opportunities for change have you missed simply because you believed it had to be hard? The moment you allow yourself to ask that gently, honestly, is the moment the door begins to open. That is where we begin. When people think of Serena Williams, they often picture an unbeatable athlete, legs like steel, a serve like thunder, and a will almost impossible to break. 23 Grand Slam titles, countless historic milestones, decades at the top. All of it made Serena the symbol of relentless effort. But behind that brilliance lies a more delicate truth, one very different from what most of us imagine. If you read her memoir, On the Line, or listen to the interviews she gave later in her career, you'll hear her talk a lot about pressure. Not pressure from opponents, but from herself. Serena admitted that one of her biggest mistakes was placing too many expectations on myself, to the point where every shot in every match became an intense internal battle. She said that if she had known how to keep her mind lighter and be more relaxed with herself, her career might have been less painful, and perhaps even better. And then there is something almost everyone finds surprising when Serena describes the matches where she played her best. She never talks about trying harder or forcing herself to reach a higher level. She talks about ease. She calls it the moment when everything slows down. The ball becomes clearer. The court feels wider. Time seems to stretch. And her body, trained for decades, simply knows what to do without the interference of conscious effort. In those moments, Serena isn't thinking I have to win. She isn't thinking I can't make a mistake. She is simply playing. Just that. Just play. Sports psychologists call this the flow state, the zone where the entire nervous system falls into harmony. Where action doesn't need to be controlled. Where results arise not from force, but from coherence, the alignment of mind, emotion, and body. Serena says it plainly, her best shots didn't appear when she pushed 10% harder, but when she released 10% of the pressure inside. It sounds like a paradox, but it is a truth most of us have forgotten. Effort builds the foundation, but ease unlocks genius. Tension creates rigidity. Release opens the channel for flow. And this is not only true on a tennis court, it is true in every part of our lives. How many times have we pressured ourselves because we believed only when I try my hardest do I deserve anything? How many times have we assumed that to overcome obstacles, we must fight harder? How many times have we pushed ourselves into stress, convinced that struggle is the only path to change? And yet, like Serena, we eventually realize that our best moments, our clearest decisions, our turning points often arrive when something inside us softens. Serena never said success comes from doing nothing. She trained harder than almost anyone alive. But what she discovered, and what she repeated in interview after interview, is this: discipline builds the base. But your inner state determines the outcome. A trained body plus a stressed mind equals chaos. A trained body plus a relaxed mind equals flow. And flow is coherence what? In quantum language, we call a clear signal. When you're in coherence, you're not fighting yourself. You're not broadcasting two conflicting messages. I want this, and I'm afraid of this. You have one frequency, one alignment. And just like in quantum experiments, reality begins to collapse into the outcome that matches that frequency. Serena steps into flow, and suddenly everything connects. You step into flow, and your life does the same. We often think results come from trying harder, but Serena's story reveals something much deeper. Results come from becoming a lighter version of yourself, less tense, less doubtful, less controlling, and more coherent. And that is the essence of quantum manifestation. Not magic, not mysticism, just a very real shift inside you, one that opens doors you thought you had to fight your way through. When you watch Serena step into flow, you might think it's just athletic talent or competitive instinct. But if you look deep enough to touch the fabric of reality itself, you'll see that what she's doing on the court is no different from what happens in the quantum world every second. Inside every particle that makes up your body. In quantum physics, Before a particle is observed, it doesn't occupy a fixed position. It exists in superposition, a state of multiple possibilities, where it is in many places, many states, many versions of itself at once. An electron isn't either here or there. It is here and there until one special condition appears, a clear signal that causes it to collapse, narrowing every possibility into a single outcome. And the fascinating part is this collapse requires no effort. It doesn't strain to choose a position. It doesn't struggle to become a particle. It simply responds to clarity and instantly becomes real. This mechanism may sound distant, but it is happening inside you every moment, every second you live. You too exist in a kind of superposition. A stronger version of you, a more confident version of you, a more loving version of you, a braver version of you, a version of you that lives wealthy, healthy, joyful, and free. All of these versions exist as probabilities. You don't create them. They have always been there, just like all of Serena's perfect shots already existed in her body after decades of training, simply waiting for the right condition to reveal themselves. So what is that condition? A single word: coherence, inner alignment. On a neurological level, the brain is always trying to conserve energy. It prefers what is familiar: habits, emotions, fears, because those neural pathways are already built. That's why the emotions you remember most easily: worry, disappointment, insecurity, so quickly become your default frequency. And following the rules of collapse, you continuously condense your life into realities that match that frequency. Not because the universe is rejecting you, but because your biology is collapsing you into the old version of yourself. This is why, even when you visualize, write affirmations, or desperately want change, if your inner world still holds conflicting signals, wanting wealth but fearing loss, wanting love but fearing hurt, wanting success but believing you're unworthy, reality will still collapse into the most familiar frequency, the frequency of your past. But something extraordinary happens when you enter coherence, the very state Serena stepped into when she stopped forcing and began to just play. When your heart and brain synchronize, when your emotions stop fighting your thoughts, when your body stops bracing in fear, then, according to HeartMath Institute, your heartbeat becomes smooth, your brain waves stabilize, and your entire nervous system falls into a subtle, intelligent harmony known as heart-brain coherence. In coherence, your defenses drop, your clarity rises, your intuition sharpens, and your entire body broadcasts a unified signal into the energy field around you. That field, what many traditions call prana, chi, spirit, or simply the field, is the space where all possibilities exist. When your signal is clear, the field responds clearly. When your signal is tangled, the field responds in the same way. It may sound mystical, but it is profoundly scientific. Quantum physics says the field never sits still. It always responds to signal. Neuroscience says humans collapse reality through familiar neural pathways. Spiritual wisdom says you receive what you become. 3 different perspectives: science, psychology, and spirituality converging into one simple truth. You do not manifest through desire. You manifest through your inner state. When Serena was fighting herself, her body broadcast tension and she played poorly. When she softened, stepped into flow, and removed the conflict between will and emotion, everything aligned. And she played brilliantly. The same is true for you. It's not that you're not good enough. It's not that you're not trying hard enough. It's not that someone else is better than you. You simply haven't learned how to align your thoughts, emotions, and body into the same frequency. And once that frequency becomes unified, reality collapses around you in ways so gentle, so natural, you almost can't believe it. This is the bridge between science and spirit, not magic, not mysticism, but the natural mechanism of the universe and of you. Once you understand that quantum manifestation isn't magic, but the natural mechanism of coherence, the next question is always, so how do I actually enter that state in my daily life? Because understanding the theory is easy, but living it, living in a clear, light, aligned frequency is where most people stumble. Not because it's difficult, but because they look for complexity in places that are inherently simple. In truth, the biggest gateways to transformation are opened by very small, very ordinary practices, almost too ordinary. So ordinary that people underestimate them. Yet it is this very simplicity that allows your body, your nervous system, and your energy field to return to the same flow. And that is exactly the condition that allows collapse to happen naturally. The first practice is coherent breathing. Don't dismiss it just because it sounds obvious. When you lengthen your exhale, when you let your diaphragm soften, when you breathe slower than your usual stressed rhythm, you send a direct message to your nervous system. We are safe. When your body believes you are safe, it stops broadcasting signals of fear, doubt, and defense. And when those defensive signals turn off, coherence naturally appears. Just 5 minutes a day, inhaling for 4 seconds. Exhaling for 6 is enough to shift your baseline state. Reality doesn't respond to your words. It responds to the state you emit. Breath is how you change that state at the root. The second practice is embodied imagination, visualizing from within the experience rather than watching it from a distance. This is where many people go wrong. They visualize as if watching a movie of their future self, but they're still standing outside the frame. The key to collapse isn't desire. It's your body believing that what you're imagining is happening now. That means you don't just see the new home, the new job, or the more confident version of yourself. You have to stand inside it. Feel the air, the temperature, the sounds, the light, even the weight of your body in that environment. When you feel instead of just observe, your nervous system cannot tell whether it's imagination or reality. It activates new neural circuits, releases hormones that match the new emotional state. And in that moment, following the quantum mechanism, you collapse into the version you embody, not the version you merely wish for. The third practice takes place during the most important moment of the day, right before you fall asleep. This is the gateway between the conscious and subconscious mind. The moment when your brain shifts into theta waves, the state in which suggestions, emotions, and imagery sink deeper than at any other time. If you go to sleep in worry, replaying old conversations, imagining worst-case scenarios, you are programming your subconscious to collapse into the old version of yourself. But if you fall asleep in gratitude, in the vivid feeling of the version you are becoming, in the sense that everything is opening, then for the next 8 hours, your body continues to broadcast that frequency. You wake up in a different orientation, lighter, clearer, and more receptive. The final practice is micro habits of identity, small actions that carry the signature of the version you want to become. This is where many people give up. They think, if I'm not rich yet, how can I live like someone who is? If I'm not confident yet, how can I act confident? But micro habits don't require you to pretend something big. They only require small signals your nervous system can accept. If you are collapsing into the healthy version of yourself, start with a 5-minute walk each morning. If you are collapsing into a more loving version of yourself, say one kind sentence to yourself each night. If you are collapsing into abundance, handle $5 with the same respect you would handle 5,000. What do these small actions do? They tell your body, this is me. I really am this person. And the body, not the willpower, is what determines the frequency you emit. You don't need to change your whole life in a single day. You only need to create one small moment of alignment, a moment where your thoughts, emotions, and actions point in the same direction. From that alignment, coherence begins. From coherence, collapse happens. And from collapse, a new reality forms. Everything begins with simplicity. And in that simplicity lies extraordinary power, the power to change how you feel about yourself, the power to redirect your life, the power to step into the version of you that you've always known was possible. When you begin to look at your life through the lens of coherence, you start to notice something interesting. The biggest transformations rarely arrive in noise, in chaos, or in intense effort. They usually appear in silence, in moments so small, so subtle, that only you can feel the shift. Something inside you moves just a little, so gently, yet in a way that cannot be undone. Maybe you never tell anyone about it. Maybe no one around you can see it. But you know you've stepped into a different frequency, not by fighting, but by allowing. That is the true nature of quantum manifestation. It's not about making things happen. It's about restoring the original alignment between your mind, your emotions, and your body. An alignment so light you no longer get in your own way, and so clear that reality has no choice but to respond to you. The problem is, we've been taught the opposite for far too long. We've been taught that if we don't push ourselves, we fall behind. That if we don't struggle, we don't deserve anything. That if it doesn't hurt, it won't lead to success. But the truth is entirely different. In the quantum world, struggle is not evidence of progress. Struggle is evidence that you're broadcasting static, the frequency of fear, tension, and lack of trust. Ease, softness, clarity, release is the true sign of alignment. When an electron collapses, it doesn't wrestle against infinite possibilities. It doesn't try harder to become a particle. It simply responds to the signal. It becomes the condition that matches the frequency acting upon it. And so do you. You don't have to fight your way into a new version of yourself. You only need to match it. When your breathing softens, you align. When you imagine from within, you align. When you fall asleep in gratitude, you align. When you take micro habits that carry the signature of your future self, you align. And once alignment appears, collapse happens almost instantly, sometimes so quickly you wonder why it felt so easy. You don't need to push away the old version of you. You only need to stop feeding it. You don't need to prove anything to the universe. You only need to return to the frequency you want to live in. And when you do, reality begins to reorganize quietly. Things that once felt difficult begin to smooth out. Things that felt distant become reachable. Things that once required enormous effort begin to open with a single small step. Not because the world changed, but because the way you step into the world did. And now, there is an invitation for you. Not an invitation of ambition, but of opening. An invitation to finally release the belief that everything important must be earned through pain. An invitation to begin seeing ease as the natural path, not the exception. An invitation to stop asking, how can I push harder, and start asking, how can I align deeper? If even a small part of your mind or your body resonates with this message even, slightly. Let it become a moment of collapse. Allow the lighter, clearer, more coherent version of you to step forward. And to let that happen right now, I want you to write a single sentence, just one, as your first micro habit of alignment. Type in the comments, "I allow the shift to be easy." Not as a pretty quote, not as a temporary affirmation, but as a decision, a signal, a frequency you choose intentionally. Every time you read that sentence, every time you see someone else write it, you reinforce a new neural pathway. You remind yourself that ease is not giving up. Ease is alignment. Ease is coherence. Ease is the condition that makes collapse possible. And collapse is how reality forms. When you begin to see change through the lens of ease, your entire life softens. Your relationships become less strained. Your days become less rushed. The right decisions begin to appear more naturally. And the truth is, you accomplish more, create more, and receive more, all while feeling lighter. When you align, everything becomes more coherent. Life doesn't become free of challenges, but challenges stop feeling like battles. They become part of the flow. And here is the final curiosity loop for you to carry. If change is truly easier than you think, what would your life become the moment you stop believing it has to be hard? How many doors would open the moment you stop demanding struggle and start allowing ease? The answer is already waiting, not somewhere far away, but inside the very moment you allow yourself to align. In the moment your breath softens, the moment your defenses loosen, the moment you say, "I allow the shift to be easy." And from that place, every possibility begins to collapse toward you.